be talking about evaluation question 1, which is, in what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media text? For this question, I'll be talking about whether or not we followed or subverted the codes and conventions of a magazine, documentary and radio advert. To do this, I'll be comparing them to pre-existing products, which will help us see whether or not our product is successful or not. So starting off with the documentary, we decided to use a presenter, and comparing this to the pre-existing documentary that I'm following is Supersize Me. They also used a presenter too. We followed the codes and conventions rather than subverting them. We decided to do this because we think it's a good idea to include a presenter, because it allows the audience to follow along with the documentary rather than just having a narrator. Comparing this to Bill Nichols' theory of the 6 modes, we decided to make our documentary participatory, whereby the film director, who is me, aka the presenter, is actually involved within the documentary rather than just having a narrator. And linking with this, the narrative structure for our documentary was linear and single-stranded, because we wanted our documentary to go in chronological order, because we only wanted to have one presenter surrounded by a group of minor characters, which is both the primary and secondary audience. We also used an omniscient narrative because we used both presenters and a voiceover. This allows the audience to get to know more about the character and the situation and what's actually happening in the documentary. As the presenter, who was me, is female, this opposes the theory of the male gaze by Laura Mulvey, because in her theory she states how females are objectified and seen as sexual objects for men, so their looks are seen rather than their personality. However, we challenge this theory because we portray the presenter in a more positive way, and which shows that her personality is overseen rather than her looks, because she's seen in a more knowledgeable way, as she can run the whole documentary by herself. She's quite independent and it's all for herself rather than anybody else. Additionally, with the presenter, for our documentary we had myself looking directly at the camera, and also in Supersize Me they also had Morgan Spurlock looking directly at the camera too, and it helps the audience engage with Morgan Spurlock, and Morgan Spurlock engage with the audience, so there's some connection in the documentary. Another code and convention of documentary is the title, which is the most obvious thing on any documentary. Our title started off like this: Big Mistake. And Supersize Me's title also started off like this. This demonstrates that we followed the codes and conventions of a documentary because we both included a title. The way Supersize Me came on had a transition on it, and we also included this on ours because it kind of magnified. We decided to do this because rather than just having it appear on the screen, we thought it'd be more interesting if it magnified. Another code and convention of a documentary is statistics. We decided to put this in our documentary because it makes the documentary look more professional and more realistic, and the audience can actually see and look visually. So we included that by this. We found out that only 1 in 3 children are physically active every day. Comparing this to Supersize Me, they also included statistics too.
Since 1980, the total number of
We decided to put statistics in a quite fun way, as did Supersize Me, as they used animations and graphics. However, instead of doing that, we decided to use chips from McDonald's because our documentary was about food. In this aspect, we sort of challenged the codes and conventions of a documentary, because in Supersize Me, they included the statistics multiple times throughout the documentary. However, in our documentary, we only included it all in one time. So I'd rather have spread it out across the documentary, so we can give the audience information bit by bit, as it may seem quite boring loading them with loads of statistics at one time. Another convention that we followed was a voiceover, which is... This episode we're specifically looking at if the Supersize Me also included a voiceover, which was here.
toxic environment is constant.
We thought that a documentary needs a voiceover because it rather than just having images on a screen, the audience doesn't really know what's happening. So by putting a voiceover in, it allows them to see oh, this is happening and this is happening. Another coding convention of a documentary is interviews. This includes vox pops and expert interviews, which were included in both documentaries. This was our vox pop interview. And this was Super Size Me's vox pop interview.
Do you eat fast food? Once in a while. Yeah.
Our documentary, we decided to have the person standing on the left-hand side looking towards me, who was on the right-hand side of the camera, so they're looking to the right of the screen. However, in Super Size Me, they have the people looking to the left of the screen. So we subverted the kind of way a vox pop is taken, as we did it the opposite way to which Super Size Me did it. Also, Super Size Me, they had a handheld camera rather than putting it on a tripod like we did, because theirs was, the handheld camera kind of gives it more of a realistic vibe. However, by putting it on a tripod, it makes it more steady, and that's the kind of look we were going for. Also, comparing our documentary to Super Size Me, the mise-en-scène which is used in both documentaries is kind of linked, because Super Size Me and our documentary was both about food. So we kind of subverted the codes and conventions, because in Super Size Me, Morgan Spurlock actually was in the vox pop himself with the member of the public. However, in ours, the presenter wasn't in it at all. She was just like behind the sidelines, and the public was staring at her, so like you could only see them, which was shown here. Another convention is sound, which both Super Size Me and our documentary included throughout the whole of the documentary, and also towards the start decided to put a montage in. So here is our montage with sound, and here's Super Size Me's montage with sound. We felt developing this convention was appropriate because it kind of like made our documentary look way more professional. We followed the codes and conventions of expert interviews by using mise-en-scène and composition. So this was our documentary's expert interview.
I think they make you very sluggish.
And comparing this to Super Size Me's expert interview, we both included relevant mise-en-scène. So for example, in our documentary, we had Amy Rayner, who was a biology expert, and you could see the biology environment behind her, as you saw in the video clip, as she was wearing her lab coat, and it said like biology on it. We also included text in the bottom left hand corner of the screen which demonstrated who the person was and what their job entitled. In our documentary, we included archival footage, which is however, comparing this to Super Size Me, they didn't include any archival footage at all. This shows that we subverted the codes and conventions, and I'm kind of glad we did. Our documentary and Morgan Spurlock's documentary can also be related to Stuart Hall's theory. Stuart Hall's theory is all about how an audience receives our encoded message, and there's 3 ways they could read it, and this could be preferred, negotiated, and oppositional. Preferred is by which they agree with what our documentary is saying. Negotiated is they're not quite too sure, they agree and they disagree. And oppositional is whereby they do not agree at all and they have the complete wrong idea. For Super Size Me, we gathered that Morgan Spurlock wanted a preferred reading because there was only like one way through, which was like fast foods are bad, and there was no kind of like another opinion on it, and this was done by like opinions, graphics, statistics. Also made it preferred so that the audience would like hopefully agree with our encoded message about how food prices are high and how they affect what kind of food we eat both in college and outside of college. In my opinion, we did mediate our documentary in order to suit our audience and their interests. The way we did this was making sure like our documentary was quite fast paced and engaging like throughout. So we did successfully like mediate our documentary. For our magazine, we did a double page spread about which linked into our documentary, which linked into our documentary. The first coding convention I'm going to be talking about is a masthead. We included a masthead in like the bottom 2 corners of our screen, which is shown here. Which said Radio Times, which is the masthead of a magazine, which is Radio Times because our documentary was BBC and that's the TV listing will be linked with. This is good because, for example, if like that page was to be photocopied and someone wanted to know, oh, which magazine did this come from, they can easily see that it's from Radio Times and they can go find out more about that specific magazine company itself. And comparing this to a pre-existing magazine which is to do with Doctor Who, they've also included the masthead too, showing that we followed the codes and conventions. In the pre-existing magazine, they sort of had a colour scheme going on of black, red and white, which is quite like simple, plain colours, and it kind of linked in with the main image they had on the screen. We also did this with our documentary because the logo of The Big Mistake, the colours which we're going through it is that like pinkish reddish colour from the stake, blue, black, white. So it shows the house style and like branding throughout the documentary and the TV listing, so it shows how they're linked in. Another convention is a main image, which is key in any double page spread or any magazine. Our main image took up like most of the page. Comparing this to the pre-existing magazine, theirs also took up like most of the page as well, so we like followed the codes and conventions there. And by using mise-en-scène, rather than just reading the article, you can see that I am like the main person of the documentary, and it shows where I've been because I had the Solihull Sixth Form College sign in the background, so when someone's looking through, they can be like, oh, she went here. Another convention is page numbers, which both the pre-existing magazine and our magazine included. This is just easy because on the contents page, you're probably going to have numbers linking to what's happening in the magazine. Another codes and convention is a title and a subheading. We included it, and so did the pre-existing magazine. Also, the specific font we used was from Defont. And it was like very bold, so it's like straight away your eyes would be like directed to it. Another convention of a magazine is a quote, which we included in ours, which is in like the center on the left hand side, which made it stand out, as you can see here. Another coding convention is a byline, which explains who the article was written by. It's good because if like someone wants to know, if someone really liked like an article, they can be like, oh, I really liked it, who was it by? And they can see more like articles written by that certain author. So the third thing I'm going to be talking about is the codes and conventions of our radio advert. Most radio adverts have like a music backing track in the background, and we followed the codes and conventions as we included this in our own radio advert. We included the same music track that was in our documentary because this shows like branding and there's like a clear link. By including a music track, it makes the radio advert more engaging. For example, if there was something on the radio and there was like really much music to it, it'd be quite boring if someone was just talking at me all the time. So by including like a jingle, that'd probably like stick in someone's head, and like they'll probably be humming the tune like later on in the day. Comparing this to a previous radio advert, they've also done it too. The pre-existing one and our one, we'd made sure our sound levels were like really good and like it doesn't go like up and down because we want to make it consistent. Another convention of a radio advert is by including a voiceover. We included both vox pop voiceovers and also the presenter's voiceovers, because by including the presenter, when they go and watch the documentary, it's more like a familiar voice and they'll be like, oh, so that's who that person was. Also, the person who did the voiceover, we made sure like they had an enthusiastic and like engaging tone, because if someone was like speaking like this and was like really dull, like you just wouldn't want to listen to that. Like you'd probably change like radio channel. Have like a really engaging like, coming now. It just makes it more engaging and people would want to watch. Another coding convention which is used in radio adverts are sound effects. However, we challenged this because we didn't include any in our documentary. The average length of radio adverts is like between 30 to 60 seconds long, which our radio advert was within. We wanted to follow this coding convention because we didn't want like the radio advert to like go on and like continue. So we're glad we kept it like short and concise, because if it went on for too long, someone would probably get a bit bored and again they'd change the channel. But by keeping it short and precise, it's kind of engaging and they liked it. So overall, I believe that we followed the codes and conventions of a documentary, radio advert and magazine rather than subverting them, and I'm kind of glad that we followed them because all three of our products, in my opinion, have come out successful. Everything turned out great.